Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today is podcast number 1736. The topic is Q&A, and the title is Managing Aches and Pains. I had a fellow trainer send me a podcast. It was from 3D Muscle Journey. You can check them out if you like. They sent the link and they said, really great conversation I just heard and I thought you'd enjoy. And the podcast was about managing aches and pains. It did have some really good content, so I thought it would be fun to share like my top 5 takeaways from that podcast because they match really well with what we've discussed in our podcast over the years. And I wanted to do it in a little bit faster way. So just make it a little bit easier for everybody to I'm going to give you like the cliff notes. How about that? So my top 5 takeaways. Number 1 is changing exercises helps reduce aches and pains. Now I'm going to go back through as I list the top 5 and give like more details. But number 2 was to identify the relationship of life stress and training stress. As life stress goes up, training stress has to go down. Number 3, workout frequency as a modulator for aches and pains. When you're experiencing more aches and pains, work out less often. I'm going to come back and kind of clean that up a little bit and let you know how to do that best. Number 4 is to modify, not miss. Now, I've talked about that with a lot of clients. One of my clients, Paul, he made a post about that relatively recently, and that was a really good post. But modify, not miss. So when you're having aches and pains, don't just do nothing. That's not going to help. Just modify what you do. And then the last thing was just some concepts on mindset when you're working through aches and pains. So those are the top 5. Let's go through them. Number 1 was changing exercises helps reduce aches and pains. One of the hosts, said how they were experiencing aches and pains with big lifts, squat, deadlift, those kind of things. And they found that changing the variation of the big lift, so instead of always a low bar, wide stance squat, maybe they do high bar narrow, maybe they do front squat. They just kind of played around with that. And they found that substituting some of the volume of the big lifts for complementary accessories helped. So rather than doing, 8 sets of 5, they would do 4 sets of 5 and then do something similar that works similar muscles, but a lower weight load. Now, those are 2 very intelligent, yes, of course, you should definitely do those kind of adjustments. Definitely good points. So if you're experiencing aches and pains and you tend to stay with movements longer than 4 weeks, my suggestion is that you should change your exercises. So I have all of my clients change their exercises every 4 weeks. Some clients, we actually exchange the exercises more often because they're very adaptive and we're getting closer to a competition. So I want to kind of play with more nuances of things. So I might change their exercises every 2 or 3 weeks. Very rarely do I have clients stay with something longer than 4 weeks. Some cases might be if somebody's brand new to lifting, they struggle with self-confidence. I might want them to stay with something a little bit longer to build up their confidence as we kind of work on technique adjustments. So they might feel by week 4 that they're still uncertain, they're still a little unsure, not feeling great with something super confident. So I don't want to switch everything up and give them a bunch of new things. That's going to make them feel even more unconfident. So we might stay with something a little bit longer, let them build their confidence. But overwhelmingly, over 90% of the time, I have clients switch exercises every 4 weeks. We talk about that in podcast 1468, so a really nice long podcast about all the benefits. But a quick rundown is the changes of positions will change specific muscle fiber and joint angle, like connective tissue stress. So the benefit of changing that is it promotes a more well-rounded development of the muscles and a more well-rounded kind of strengthening of the connective tissues related to a joint. This helps to strengthen the muscles and joints in all positions, which does reduce aches and pains. It also increases mobility. And then another benefit of is typically when people try to make weekly progressions, if they stay with something longer than 4 weeks, the degree in which they're able to progress becomes insignificant, or they lose technique quality in order to try to force out extra reps or force out extra weight, which can again cause aches and pains. So I really love switching exercises every 4 weeks for a lot of physical reasons, but then also there's just the mindset is it increases and maintains interest in the workouts. If you feel like, you're doing new things, you're learning new things, you're experimenting, you're challenging yourselves, you're getting to work on new PRs all the time, you don't want it obviously changing so often that people feel overwhelmed, but you don't want to stay with something so long that people feel bored with the workouts. So there's a lot of physical benefits, a lot of mindset benefits to changing the workouts. Like every 4 weeks is what I recommend to all the trainers I work with. Now, everybody has to find their own, version of that, but that's what I like and that's what I use. Then we also have podcast 659 is a training podcast titled Big and Small, You Need Them All. And what that podcast was talking about, you can't just do squat and deadlift all the time forever and not expect to have some aches and pains or just odd development or just unbalanced tightnesses in muscles and joints. You do have to mix in the big movements and the small movements. It helps for a lot of that, like we said, well-rounded development to strengthen the muscles and joints in all positions, which increases mobility, which decreases aches and pains. It also, changing positions and getting some smaller movements in there. Like rather than always doing the conventional deadlift, maybe you mix in some snatch grip RDLs. That's going to be weight load limiting, but it's really going to work on thoracic strengthening as well as the upper hamstring connections. And that allows like weaker muscles in a complex group of muscles to be better targeted, and therefore they can grow better. So we know like you're only as strong as your weakest link. You want to expose those weak links. And the benefit of small movements is you can get the weak links involved quicker than if you just hammer a big movement forever. So somebody's like, well, I'm just going to do 10 sets of squats and then you're definitely going to get the weak muscles involved. Sure. Is that intelligent? No. We're talking about a precision approach rather than a sledgehammer. You can just beat the shit out of your body. Absolutely. And can you eventually get the small muscles to be involved? Yes. But that's going to lead to a lot of aches and pains. So if you're experiencing aches and pains and you believe in I'm just going to squat forever, well, that might be why you're having the aches and pains. So I've dealt with that argument a bunch of times. And then usually those are also the people that are like, they come to me for help, but then they argue for what they do that works. And I'm like, well, it wouldn't be working if you're sitting here talking to me, that kind of thing. So there are absolute times when big lifts are helpful. Of course, yes. But there are times when smaller variations, like accessory type lifts, like an RDL or a walking lunge or a front squat, are great exercises for their own benefits as well. So if you're experiencing aches and pains, one of the main takeaways was to change exercises more often, and I recommend 4 weeks. Make sure you blend in small movements as well as big movements, and you can learn more about that in podcast 659. Second takeaway was the relationship of life stress and training stress. When life stress goes up, training stress should come down. Why is that? Because they compete for the same things. When your life is super stressful, your nervous system is going to be in fight or flight mode more often throughout the day than not. You're going to have less just resiliency. You're going to feel more emotional. You're just going to feel worn down, tired. You're just, you're not going to feel your best. So if life is pulling more out of your CNS, that means you have less CNS to give to your training, so therefore you should lessen the demand from training. That doesn't mean you have to lessen intensity, doesn't mean you have to lessen in volume, it does mean you have to lessen one of them. So if you like lifting heavy, well, instead of 3 sets of max effort, just do 1 set and then move on. You can still do heavy, challenging things, but you want to reduce the volume of them. So you want to bring down your volume and or your intensity in some mixture. But to understand that if life is demanding more of me, then I have less of me to give to my training. And that can be CNS, that can be food. If you're super stressed, you might not be eating the way you normally do. You might not be hydrated the way you normally do. So one of the hosts talked about that he experienced that a string of injuries he was having was related to when he was dehydrated. So that's very important. Also, sleep. If you're stressed, you're not going to sleep as well. Therefore, you're not going to be as recovered. So therefore, you should bring down your training volume. Your training stress. And then also, if life is crazy, you're not going to be as focused in your workouts, and you're more susceptible to bad positions or missing certain cues, and you can get injured. So the second takeaway was when life stress goes up, training stress should go down, and that can help reduce aches and pains. Third takeaway is workout frequency as a modulator for aches and pains. So if you're struggling with aches and pains, you can typically work out, say, 5 days a week. Drop it down to 3 days a week. Just do, take out a couple things here and there, a couple working sets of things here and there. If you have some movements that kind of are the similar, drop down to one of them, but bring your workouts down. Now, you can still move on the other days. Go for a walk. Do some, light stretching. Just move a little bit, but make it really, really, really low stress. Actually, make it more so relaxing and enjoyable. So if you're training 5 days a week, you have aches and pains, bring that down to 3. If you're training 4 days a week, bring it down to 2 to 3. But you can use workout frequency as a modulator to help control and manage aches and pains. Fourth takeaway is modify, not miss. Motion is lotion. The idea of moving is it helps keep blood flow through whatever is being giving you the ache and pain kind of feeling. The benefit of that is our blood has a lot of good stuff, has a lot of restorative things in it. If we're eating right, it's going to have healthy proteins in it. There's going to be a lot of restorative power in blood. So therefore, we want to have the blood flowing through those muscles. And not that we want to cause a ton of irritation, like inflammation, but we do want to get the movement. We want to get a little bit of a sweat going. You want to move those muscles in the joints and things that are annoyed. Also, movement is a form of dynamic stretching. So you're going to help maintain more mobility, flexibility, more movement quality through the annoyed joints and muscles. And that also helps reduce compensating stress in healthy but nearby and related muscles and joints. So motion is lotion. So if you have aches and pains, don't skip workouts, just modify. Like we said with the frequency, if you're going to bring the frequency down, still move on the other days. Go for a walk or something. So that's the other tip, is when you're struggling with aches and pains, modify, not miss. Number 5, the last thing is just the mindset, is when you're struggling with aches and pains, pushing through and just beating the crap out of yourself obviously is not going to make everything better. I mean, you can keep doing it, because if you're stubborn, you're going to. Just notice, okay, I've been doing that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 months, 2 years, and nothing has been getting better. I have fluctuations where I feel good for a day, but then I feel like crap for the rest of the week. If it's not an improvement and the issue isn't going away, then you need to modify what you're doing. You need to make it different. You need to give your body a chance to heal up. Sometimes people won't do that because they're like, oh, it's mentally weak. If I don't push through, that means I'm a big fat baby. No, it doesn't. An all or nothing mindset, believe it or not, is actually easier. It is easier in life to pick one thing and say, screw everything else. I'm going to focus on this one thing. That is easier. I'm not saying it's easy. There's a big difference between those two words. It's easier. What is challenging is to moderate what you're doing and to balance what you need to do with everything else you need to do. All or nothing is easy. Moderation is messy. Moderation is challenging. Can you have great relationships? Can you perform well at work? Can you train at an intensity and frequency that allows you to still do well with relationships and work quality? Can you not have poor mental health and hate yourself because you always feel like crap and you're tired and fatigued? Moderation is challenging. Moderation does not mean that you're taking the easy way out. Absolutely, it does not. Moderation, when done properly, is really freaking hard because you want to give your best to all of the things you're doing, but you have limited time and limited resources to give your best within. So therefore, it becomes very challenging is, how do I give my best today if I only have an hour? How do I give my best today if I've had half the calories I normally should have? How do I give my best today if I have to work out at 5 a.m. rather than 5 p.m. because I have a crazy appointments and a bunch of traveling I got to do, right? All or nothing is easy. Moderation is messy. So it doesn't mean you're a baby or you're mentally weak if you have to moderate what you do. That's intelligent. Because what is the long-term goal? The long-term goal is to be a badass, a total badass. You want to look in the mirror, feel great. You want all of it, right? You want to look a little better, be a little stronger, be able to move a little bit more. Like, we want all the goals. So do whatever you have to do to help you get to those goals. If you keep being stubborn and doing the same damn things and you're not moving forward, you're an idiot. That means you're mentally weak because you're not managing the process of change. If you're hiding from change, that's mental weakness. If you embrace the messy moderation, the messy middle, and you learn, okay, crap, what I was doing got me here, but it ain't going to get me there. How do you go from good to great, right? We do a certain thing to get to good, but how do you go from good to great? Sometimes that involves something different, something new. Okay. So those are the 5 takeaways I have from that podcast. If you're dealing with aches and pains, how can you help manage them? Is changing exercises helps reduce aches and pains. Relationship of life stress and training stress. Remember, when life stress goes up, training stress has to come down. Workout frequency as a modulator for aches and pains. If you're struggling with aches and pains, if you're struggling to make progressions in your training, just train a little less often but still move on the other days. Number 4 is modify, don't miss. Motion is lotion. Keep moving. Mindset is number 5, and that's just understanding that if you want something new, you got to do something new. If you're dealing with a lot of aches and pains and they keep coming back up, you got to try something new, okay? If you have any questions, reach out. We do have our one-on-one coaching service, so I can always help you with learning what that new is, creating training programs and nutrition programs that'll work for where you are and what'll get you from good to great. So you can learn more about all of our services on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. If you have any questions, if you need anything, shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support the podcast, which you can do on our website. And if you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. On Instagram and YouTube, you can find us and follow us under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.